Hello again, everyone. Welcome to an episode of Game Pass Grab Bag, your weekly podcast reviewing games from the Game Pass collection, bringing you 3 new perspectives from bringing skill range. I am the star of the Star Wars, Andrew. With me are Jar Jar Binks, Keith.
Hello.
And our returning special guest who considers himself a real Trekkie. Thank you for joining us again, Donnie.
That's painful. I was hoping for Ewok, but whatever.
So this week we did a listener request, so thank you so much to Subnautica Gamer, who recommended that we play Star Wars Battlefront 2 by EA. Star Wars Battlefront 2 is a first and third person, depending which perspective you prefer to do. It is a action multiplayer game where you get to play various characters, and it's essentially, if you've played the Battlefield series, it's very similar. You know, Star Wars Battlefront has been kind of an old running series that kind of got revived a little bit by EA. It got revived and subsequently killed by EA. But yes, it's a big multiplayer game where you can, go 32 versus 32, I think is the max it can go. Or is it 64? No, I think it's 32 32.
I think it's 32.
All right. But there's also various game modes of different, fun things you can do, like Ewok Hunt. There's some objective game modes, some co-op modes. And with Star Wars Battlefront 2, there actually is also a campaign, which actually is not terrible. But, yeah, let's get into this. Keith, why don't you tell the listeners here what you think of Star Wars Battlefront?
I thought Star Wars Battlefront was terrible. It's not very fun. It's kind of dead. Nobody really plays it anymore. The graphics are alright for its age. Overall, pretty hard pass for me. However, Star Wars Battlefront 2, when I did play the right game...
Which you were supposed to play.
Not as bad of an experience. It's still... honestly, I think I would still probably put it in a pass category for myself, but... A lot of the things that I was complaining about in Battlefront 1 are not as bad in Battlefront 2. It's just the Star Wars thing doesn't do enough for me, I don't think, to make it a game that I really just want to come back to, is the big thing. Because if I was a Star Wars fan, I think the gameplay is more than fine and even pretty fun with friends, that it's worth playing on that aspect. But as not Star Wars person, I think I'd probably go play like Battlefield or something like that.
Yeah, this is a good point that I probably should have brought up first, Keith. But us three here are probably perfect range of Star Wars fandom. Keith, you've never watched a single Star Wars, is that right?
No, and I don't dislike it. It's nothing. I have nothing against the franchise. I kind of just didn't grow up with it as part of me, and so I never took the time to get into it. I kind of did the same thing with Marvel for a while, but then I finally did. And now I subsequently kind of don't care because that's a whole different thing. But Anywho, Star Wars was just never really a part of my childhood experience.
And then for me, I have seen all the movies and some of the side stuff now on Disney. I enjoy Star Wars. I know it relatively well, but I wouldn't consider myself like a super fan. And then Donnie here, how would you rank yourself?
Yeah, I'm on
with all the Star Wars posters in the back.
Yeah, if you can see the office here, a bunch of Star Wars posters in the background. I'm a huge fan, always have been. It was probably it wasn't ever a movie I obviously watched in the theaters when it came out in '77, but I've been hooked in the franchise ever since. I don't know, it's something with the sci-fi, the space, and just the story that it told and how it kind of came into where we're all at now in terms of the Renaissance or whatever you want to say with our age and the nostalgia that they're trying to play on it. So I've always been a fan. I'm surrounded by Star Wars stuff. I've just always been a big fan. So I love the lore. I know a whole lot about it, or at least I think I do. But yeah, I really enjoy the franchise. So I've always been a big fan.
And so Donnie, where does Star Wars Battlefront 2 land for you? Is this a game or pass?
I can straight up say it's a game. This is a 100% game for me. It has been for a long, long time. I can go into some of the details as to why later, but definitely a game for me, Andrew.
So for me, the big question, Star Wars Battlefront 2 is not a new game. This has been out for quite some time. So if you are listening to this episode, the more probably important question is this game dead? And I gotta say, no, it is not. So if you are interested in Battlefront 2, I actually would give this a game. It's still a lot of fun. I played this when it first came out. I played the beta. I had a ton of fun with the beta. I never ended up buying the game, but I remember I rented it when it came out. And we'll get into it, but it had some loot box systems that were absolutely awful and probably ended up killing the series. But that's all been changed, and it's a much more enjoyable experience now. And even if you aren't interested in the multiplayer, the campaign is actually, the story is actually relatively interesting. The gameplay for the campaign is kind of a mixed bag, but it's actually still a very fun experience. It's short and kind of sweet, so even if you're not interested in the multiplayer aspect of Battlefront 2, I would actually recommend checking out at least the campaign. But
and I have to add to that, Andrew, because even if you are even vaguely a Star Wars fan, like if you look at the landscape we have right now, I mean, we have Squadrons, which came out in the last couple of years, but this is the closest thing to like a Star Wars game that you're going to get, that you have. That's about it. I mean, unless you play like the MMOs and like some of the, Knights of the Old Republic.
Well,
and
Jedi Survivor.
SWTOR and KOTOR. Yeah, Survivor is good if you like a single player experience, but if you want like to play with buddies or anything, like this is all you got right now besides Squadrons. I mean, that's really it. And it always it has been since 2015 when Keith's least favorite game came out, Battlefield 1. But now Battlefront 1. But now you got Battlefront 2 came out 2 years later, 17, and it is still what I would say is like one of the better Star Wars experience games that there is. Now Outcast comes out next year, and that will change things, but right now it's all we got.
Yeah. And it's funny, when I first picked this game, I was like, would it be a funny bit if Keith played the wrong game and played Star Wars Battlefront, OG Xbox, what was it, like in like 2002 or something like that? I don't even know if you can play that. I was like, but that'd be funny because it's literally the exact same name, Star Wars Battlefront, Star Wars Battlefront 2, that was on the original Xbox. And then naturally Keith actually did play the wrong game.
Well, I don't know if you still play the 360 games now, but like I played those 2 years ago at least, maybe a little less, and like those games still rip. And those games had some mechanics that these games do not.
I had a ton of fun in those games.
Yeah, and I think that's why we gravitated towards it with my group of friends. Sorry, Keith.
No, it's fine. Because the funny thing is that the text that Andrew sent me was, "Hey, do you want to do Battlefront next week?" And I said, "Yeah, that sounds fine." And I brought it up, but I there's 2 Battlefronts, but Andrew's usually pretty specific. So if he said Battlefront versus Battlefront 2, maybe we're gonna do both of them.
Because I said there's a campaign in the game. There's no campaign in Star Wars Battlefront 1.
There's some story-like-ish missions enough that it could have fooled me, because you know how I am with story, Andrew. So you know how much attention I was probably paying to whatever cutscene they gave me. I went, yeah, that was probably the story. Great. And I carried on. And it's the experience, like I said, not great. It's if you do get into a match. So I tried to do one of the big matches, just kind of a fun little side note here. And you can't find the big matches. No one is doing the 20v20s and that. But I did get into a cargo match, which was, 5v5. And it's sweaty to the point where I was playing against people whose names were We Get Cargo. They have created their own Xbox persona surrounding a effectively dead game. So they were a lot of fun to play against. It really made my experience enjoyable. But that said, my multiplayer experience with Andrew on Battlefront 2, the correct game, was a lot more fun. Ewok Hunt, like you said, a lot of fun, like a infection style type of gameplay where you're running around as Ewoks. Because while I don't have the deep lore, Ewoks in my mind are like the Star Wars equivalent of the Mario Tanuki suit, which was like my all-time favorite thing. So I'm a big Ewok fan.
But like that mode specifically, I remember just being terrified because like you'd be running around, you get separated from people, and it's pitch black. Like, and these little teddy bears are throwing sticks at you and like spearing you, and then all of a sudden one of them gets a power up, and like you're toast, dude. Like that was terrifying. I remember first playing that like when it came out, because that mode wasn't at release. It was like a DLC that was free. Man, it was scary.
I got a pretty good clip on it.
Scary mode
that I'm going to upload on our Twitter. Yeah, when I was playing with Keith was always starting as an Ewok, but it was like me and like 3 other people, and me and one guy are like trying to stay together. All of a sudden, just rocks come and crush the guy. Now I'm by myself. I see glowing eyes charging me. I kill one. I turn around, and there's 8 Ewoks charging me. I'm just trying to sprint through the woods. Yeah, it was funny because when we first booted that up, I'm like, is this like a horror survival game mode? Like, what is this? Because like the game,
That's what it feels like.
Yeah, it doesn't give much description. It's just like Ewok hunt, and it says survive the night, and it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? So when I was like, Keith, let's try this game mode, and like as like more descriptions were in the loading screen, I was like, is this like a survival horror? Like, is this PvE? Like, what's going on? Yeah, it was kind of a interesting surprise, but it's like an infection game mode.
Yeah, we used to just like camp out in the corner of the map and just wait until everybody was gone, and then just bolt for the ship to get out of there. It never worked, but like it was a scary experience.
Yeah.
There was one guy who he just constantly ran from me, and like if it's 1v1, I think the soldiers can pretty much always outrun the Ewoks. So I finally gave up on him, but he was one of the few people who survived
Just
that
by
match
running
because,
around in circles.
Just yep, basically. That was really the biggest thing. Take a couple pot shots at me to get me to back off every now and then if I caught him, and that was that. But overall, I think I liked the aspect too that you had pointed out, Andrew, is that there's just an overall quick play with your party. So we were thrown into campaign modes, we were thrown into multiplayer matches. Like we really just got a taste of everything just by being in that quick play, and I really liked that diversity in the gameplay and like the mix up of it.
Yeah, it definitely makes like finding matchmaking and multiplayer way more interesting. But Keith, did you ever end up actually playing the campaign at all?
No, I thought about it, but then I just went to bed instead.
Wow, way to do your homework there, Keith. So
I'm sure I would have found the gameplay to be just fine and the story to be fine, but I wouldn't have cared because it's Star Wars and it didn't do much to add anything for me.
I guess it's a very fair point. But yeah, the campaign is interesting because I remember in the first Battlefront, like OG Battlefront, it usually was just multiplayer, but you actually play against bots, and it had, once again, kind of a side story between like loading matches, but nothing really. In this one, there's a full-fledged story, which I guess is technically canon. Ever since Disney bought Star Wars, anything is supposed to be canon. But yeah, you're mostly following this Empire squad called Inferno Squad, and they're supposed to be like the best of the best, and not a very original Star Wars story here, but this best of the best squad of the Empire realizes, wait, are we the bad guys? And then they decide maybe we should stop killing innocent people and maybe join the rebellion. And so the actual overall story is kind of like, but what makes it so good that I actually enjoyed the campaign and the story was the graphics, the cutscenes, and the voice acting was really good. This is one thing I was really interested in having Keith here, like not being a Star Wars fan. I was more interested, like, is Star Wars Battlefront meant to be more of a nostalgia trip? Hey, if you like Star Wars, look at here's Han Solo, here's Princess Leia. Don't you remember these people? So I didn't know if this game was just going to be like, something that's more meant for fans, which I guess it kind of is because, Keith here is giving the game a pass, even though he didn't play the campaign. Even me, who's, like I said, watched the movies, I actually really enjoyed the campaign. The actual gameplay for the campaign I thought was a little lackluster, but what about you, Donnie? What did you think of the campaign?
Yeah, well, so the campaign is interesting, and it's interesting now looking at it because keep in mind it came out in 2017, right? So Force Awakens introduced all the new sequel characters. So you got Rey and you got Kylo Ren and John Boyega and all those guys, which is all good and fine. But like this followed Iden Versio, who like you said started out on the Empire, and she was this top-ranking official, enforcer, what have you. But her story, like you said, kind of it transitions, right? And it's a recycled story in terms of Star Wars. We're like, is this really the right thing? And are we doing this, blah, 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 kind of stuff? And it's this female protagonist that goes through. And then you end up getting intertwined with, like, the massive plans that, like, the Emperor had and all this kind of stuff. So from a Star Wars, like, fan perspective, again, in this dry spell of games, like, it was awesome to jump in. And to your point, Andrew, like, the graphics are amazing. And, like, you'd go through levels. And this was before Jedi Survivor and Jedi, all that stuff. And it was all the new games that came out, but it was like, man, you're in it and you get to feel the whole story go through it up until the fall essentially of the Empire, which was just a cool thing to do, back in the day. And I thought it was a cool way to take it. It'd be interesting to see where Disney canon is now and like how they could wind that back into a greater story. But I thought, as a fan, it was really a cool take on the story. And it was before the Rey story and before the Mary Sue stuff or whatever you want to say about the sequel trilogy, or it's at the same time essentially. But I thought it was fun and I really enjoyed it. And that was one of the reasons I wanted it. I was like, Battlefront, I loved playing in the early 2000s on the Xbox 360 or whatever. And they never had a campaign and they had some other mechanics, but this was cool, and I really enjoyed the campaign a lot. I mean, you're right. Like, was the shooting mechanics perfect? No. And was the AI perfect? Absolutely not. But like the gameplay of the story for it, I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I was.
Well, and that's the thing I can see is even from I don't even think there was a lot that was bad about it, but I taking myself as the non-Star Wars person out of it. I don't think that the gameplay would have done anything that wowed me overall, but I can absolutely see where from a Star Wars fandom, having that opportunity to kind of dive in and role play it a lot more from this aspect of these big battles and playing these iconic characters and all of these things, I can absolutely understand where that is. And that's where I don't have any issue with it. It's just that for my personal taste, it just doesn't fit, and the gameplay doesn't do enough to really be like, wow, this is something you got to check out.
Yeah, because the overall gameplay of Battlefront is very basic. It's kind of a hero shooter, depending what class you're picking, or obviously what special hero, if you're playing one of the big heroes or villains, they obviously get their own abilities. But it's essentially how Battlefront works is a little bit like a hero shooter does today. Everyone has their own specific abilities, specific guns, how kind of class their works as and builds. So bringing that aspect into a campaign where you're not really changing your class, you're given a select character. You are playing as Princess Leia this match. You're playing her basic build out. You can change things slightly, but does it actually add much to the gameplay? No, not really. Usually the campaign gameplay whittled down to you are defending this point. We're just throwing some dummy AI at you. You're just going to blast them for 2 minutes, 3 minutes, and next objective. So I was a little disappointed in how uninventive the gameplay was in the campaign, but it still was a mindless fun, kind of like I get from when I play Dynasty Warriors. It's not something where I'm oh, I need to try really hard, or this is going to be super difficult. This level's hard. It's usually nah, I'm just going to shoot a bunch of dummies and there we go, I win. So it had a fun aspect of that. There's every once in a while you're jumping in, a spaceship and doing some space combat, which is fun. But I was hoping for a little more innovative gameplay when it came to the campaign. Even too, I don't remember any big epic battles of playing essentially a multiplayer match, but it's just AI of you capturing points and progressing this big fight. Because I think it's the fact that I mostly played the Battlefield series before I really focused it on Star Wars Battlefront. In the Battlefield series, whenever they did a campaign, always had a really interesting, fun, epic battle that you were playing in single player. And it was a fun, innovative gameplay. In this, it was mostly just a shooting gallery. So if you're looking for something just mindless, it's good.
Yeah, and some part of that too, Andrew, what I was, kind of equated to, because I came late into the Call of Duty franchise. I never played it because I was with a guy who'd walk out in Call of Duty and you'd get sniped in the head and then you have to reset and then you're back, right? I hated that. I never played the traditional Battlefields and I never played Call of Duty growing up as a gamer or anything. But what I resonate this to is I've gotten both Modern Warfare 2 and Modern Warfare 3 in the last couple of years. Never touched the campaigns on either one of those, and I didn't need to because I was only playing that to play multiplayer. So I totally see the perspective, not enjoying it for having this enthralling, oh, I feel I'm so accomplished and I did this mission, I accomplished all these chapters in the campaign, great. But for the Star Wars Battlefront one, I knocked that thing out first. I did that first thing just to get used to the game. I was all right, this is how the mechanics work. This is the game, got it. And then once I beat the campaign, never went back to it again. But I never have touched the campaign for either one of those Call of Duty games, and I've had those now for a couple of years. So it's I don't know.
Well, back in the day when this first came out, you got rewards for the multiplayer, including loot boxes. So Donnie, you've been playing this game since the beginning. Please tell us the awful mess that EA created with the loot box system, because I remember this game was super controversial when it came out.
Yeah, and I won't say that I'm the lore expert on the faults and the commerce behind the reputation that EA got from this game, but I do recall a couple things. And one of those was when they first built. So Battlefront 1 didn't have this. Battlefront 2 had this wonderful system that EA thought was going to be a game changer and really level set for the playing field for all the players. Is that if you just wanted to pony up $5, $10, or $90, you could buy these crystals. And with these crystals, you could unlock these loot boxes. And there was a chance in the loot boxes that you'd be able to unlock Darth Vader or Leia or all these classic characters. And so they thought that was a good idea. The players did not. And so this game launched in late 2017. And by launch, you played the beta. So before the beta came out and people are already getting pissed off about it, by the time the game actually launched, there was a Reddit thread, and you can look it up today. The Guinness World Record still states this one Reddit post as the #1 most downvoted Reddit post in all of Reddit history. And that's in the Guinness Book of World Records. It's 670,000 downvotes, which is the highest that anything has ever gotten on Reddit. And that forced the devs to say, maybe this isn't the best strategy to have.
Maybe having a whole
the playing
record.
field. To equal the playing field for all players. I just thought it was funny as hell. I'm like this is absolutely insane that like they thought this was gonna be a good thing. But of course EA, that was, I guess they were at the top of their game. I mean, they've been making games since the 90s at this point, so it's like a 25-year run-ish where they were like just loving it, crushing it, and they're like, we're gonna make a bunch of money doing this and we'll level set it for everybody. Turns out that was really the wrong idea. Because like come I think it was, like I said, March of 2018, they had issued press release after press release formally dropping all loot boxes and stating that it wasn't gambling, even though it totally was gambling. I mean, they got class action suit by like Belgium, yeah. the country. Yeah. Like there was like all sorts of stuff like we're coming at them, and they just couldn't handle it. And they're like, all right, fine, we'll just pull all loot boxes. So like people had invested in these crystals, and they had to rework the entire game system 6 months into the game being live. Like that is a nightmare. That's an absolute nightmare. But some big fat, the high wigs on that chain of the EA games are just lining their pockets being like, this is great. This is working out perfectly. Until the PR nightmare came that was the release of this game. They
still got paid, though.
Man, I remember that this game was absolutely just blasted when it came out. I did remember that. I forgot about the Reddit post. But yeah, this was it was kind of a wave of where people started recognizing like, hey, we're not going to put up with this crap anymore. And they started demanding refunds, and Xbox and Sony were actually honoring a lot of them. And I think that's, maybe it's, something that they've had in place for a long time, but I feel like that's a lot of where they came up with those like 5 hours of meaningful gameplay and like those types of rules to say, hey, you played it, but we're going to say that you figured out real quickly that this is a hot garbage game. We're going to give you your money back.
The best thing that happened out of this, though, it was the slow decline, which is still slowly declining and or revamping or retooling of microtransactions. Like when this came out, I remember that. If you remember like Destiny 2 and all, or Destiny at the time, I don't know if it's Destiny 2 just then, but like everything started being like, whoa, microtransactions are bad. We're on the good side now. Our game has no microtransactions. Like, remember how those were all like publicly like positive comments that these game manufacturers are putting out? It's like, we have no microtransactions. Like, we don't want to be like EA Sports or EA Games. So like, please, no microtransactions here. Don't worry about it, bud. Like, that's kind of a blessing that we got out of the end of this turmoil that was this catastrophe.
Yeah, this game really is kind of historic. Like I feel like this game truly was the turning point when it came to loot boxes. Because I mean, now everything's battle passes, but this was like peak loot boxes. Because normally a decent game, had loot boxes, but it was always cosmetic, strictly cosmetic. But like you said, Donnie, they had the heroes, the most valuable characters that were very, very powerful at the beginning of this game, that were hidden in loot boxes. So it was very pay to win. If you got Darth Vader, you could go into a match and just start smoking everyone as Darth Vader. And then not only that, like you're leveling up your class and you get these cards to upgrade your character that will change its gameplay a little bit. And, there's different quality grades. I think like 1 through 4, 4 being the best. And those were in loot boxes. So it's like, hey, cool, you leveled up the heavy, but your character still stinks because you haven't pulled the card yet in a loot box. So better open up your wallet. Hopefully you can draw that card. And even then you're drawing cards. You're like, well, I don't play a sniper. Great, I got this card for a sniper, but I don't want it. But yeah, I remember this game was so controversial because it wasn't in the beta. In the beta, you could play as Darth Vader just free. And then now it's like, nope, now you had to pay.
Yeah. No, it's this in Overwatch that we have to thank for the lack of loot boxes that we see in games now. Again, the Battle Pass has replaced that because they got smart and they're like, well, if people want to pay for this and get the tier, there you go, you got it. Now you work through the game and you've earned it. Yeah. Great. But there's no gambling, right? I mean, there are still examples of that you can call out, but Overwatch in this game right here, like, made the turning point where they're like, this is actually bad to make children gamble. Yeah. Like that's a bad thing to do, and we just shouldn't do it as a practice. And this is the game that you have to thank for. This and Overwatch. That's about it.
Well, for cosmetics, it's perfectly fine.
I think so for cosmetics. Although it is weird though, because I think Fortnite is a really good example of a game that is so cosmetically driven, but people of all ages, and it's not just the kids in that aspect one for sure. Like, people clamor for those skins and those high, rarity things. I don't understand it. I never will. I could play as the basic character my entire life. And especially in that case, I'd rather see other people have the skins because then I actually look at them. I don't look at myself
Keith.
While I play.
That's what I always say.
I don't care what people think when they look at me. Heck, the best thing I can do is be the basic character, and it never happens this way. But on the very, very rare occasion that I do something really good and maybe embarrass said person, they feel like they lost to somebody who wasn't good because I don't have some fancy skin. So I like to take that route more than anything anyways.
Yeah, we'll see. If you ever catch me on Fortnite, which is like once every 6 months, maybe. I'm Obi-Wan Kenobi on Fortnite, and I didn't buy that, but my buddy bought it for something. He had extra points, so he gifted it to me, which I didn't know you could do on Fortnite. So I'm just saying, I totally appreciate that. I don't pay for skins. I don't buy skins on Modern Warfare or any of that crap. But I do play Fortnite as Obi-Wan Kenobi. I just have to.
Oh, and I'll never even criticize someone for paying for a skin or doing it. I just don't understand it, like, for my own personal choices. But it's even better when you can get it for free, obviously. So if I had that option, then I would. I actually, my oldest, he had a code for, I don't know, he came with his Xbox and he didn't play Fortnite for the longest time. The amount of times I thought about using that code for, I don't know, some skin, and I just never actually did. Finally dug it out, and he was able to use it because he started playing Fortnite recently, so I was excited for him, and I was glad I didn't use it. But honestly, I almost use it for the pure concept of, hey, it's a free skin, and I'll use it to use it. But yeah, it's hard pressed for me to at least dig out the wallet for him.
That,
especially if it's only for a chance. If I know I'm gonna get it and I really want the skin, then maybe. Because I think I spent $2 for, was it maybe the Batman car? Like the Batmobile in Rocket League. I think that might have been the only cosmetic I've ever actually paid for. So I've done it.
I bought a Fast and Furious car for Rocket League once or twice. I'm not going to lie. Brian Spillner's R34 Skyline, hard to beat on the old Rocket League. So I can't say I didn't buy any skins, but I don't buy a lot of them.
Well, you can call it all in your head all you want, but the cars make a difference. It absolutely makes a difference. So.
See, like, I fully agree. Like, I will never shame anyone who spends money and buys skins on a game because, at the end of the day, you're supporting the developers. If you truly like the game, cool. I don't care. But I don't understand. I'm the same way. I don't understand people who drop like thousands of dollars, especially when it's a first-person shooter game, because you're not seeing that skin. All you're seeing is the character's gloves. So I'm like, you just spent $20 to essentially see somebody's gloves because, like, you don't really see your character. Other people get to see that character that you're playing as. So I just never understood the appeal. Like, Overwatch, their skins are like $20. Like, that's so expensive to essentially pay for fancy gloves because you don't get to see the skin.
Some of those gloves are sexy as, man. What are you gonna do?
Ridiculous. I just have some really cool Moira hands. That is for sure. But I don't know, man. If I have the Lilith skin, I want to be able to look at the Lilith skin.
Like, that's a great skin.
Because that is an awesome skin. And so I would love to watch someone die as I push the point and win.
But speaking of skins, though, I gotta say the skins in Battlefront are pretty disappointing. So, like, I think it's crazy. There's 0 loot boxes now. 0. Like, I thought for sure you could.
If you go to the tab, it's empty.
Yeah.
There's no tab. Like, the tab is there. It's empty.
You can see an icon saying loot boxes, and it says 0 out of 0. And, like, when you play the campaign, when you beat the campaign, it says, congratulations, you unlocked the loot box. But no, they are gone. They're not there at all. Instead, you get this in-game currency. There's no premium currency either. That's completely gone. So you get an in-game currency, which you can use to unlock skins for the various classes and stuff like that. But I gotta say, the skins are very disappointed. Like, they're very generic. It's like, hey, it's Stormtrooper. Now he's a sand Stormtrooper. Now he's a jungle Stormtrooper. Like, it's just like nothing that cool or interesting. It's very basic. So I have like 100,000 credits and I'm like, I'm not going to spend any of this. I don't care to have a victory pose or a dance. Like, so you're definitely not playing this for the cosmetics.
No, you're not. I mean, I thought it was interesting now, though, because, like, now that they did get rid of the loot boxes, you just unlock them. So, like, yeah, that Sand Trooper, I was gunning for that for, several levels just so I could unlock enough points or crystals or whatever the hell they call it, the currency, just so I could unlock it, just because that was different than the standard white guy. But there's, like, 3 versions. One's green, one's tan, and one's white. Like, awesome.
It's just, like, color alterations. That's it. But yeah, so you're still playing the multiplayer game and you're leveling up each specific class. You have the assault, the heavy, the recon, and the officer. Each one has their own special kind of perks, and different types of guns. Assault uses obviously like, automatic rifles. The heavy has like an LMG. So as you're playing up, you're leveling up each class. And now, since they got rid of the loot box system, you can now unlock the cards that will give you perks, maybe change your kit a little bit. Like the assault has normally a thermal detonator, but it can change into an impact grenade, or it can turn into like longer timed or a cluster bomb. Like, it's slight alterations to the kit. So instead of, pulling that card from loot box, you now are just leveling up that class and just unlocking it. You get skill tokens. Every time you level up the class, you get a skill token. And then naturally, once you unlock that card, then you can upgrade the card. Just so you are mostly picking and choosing what you want instead of getting a random draw from a loot box. So that is the big drastic change now with the game, which I gotta say I do like. I don't know, Donnie, I guess you could probably say more because you played this game obviously when it was earlier. But I remember a lot of people were crying that it was pay to win and that the skills really altered the gameplay. But I gotta say, I'm playing against people that are max level. Literally, it says max on next to their name, and I was still beating them. So to me, it didn't feel like it was like, oh, this guy's at max level, he's just gonna mop the floor with me. I felt like the skills and upgrades you were getting, the only person who would notice them is you, and not the other people.
Right, 100%. No, I totally agree with you, and like you're right. Like, because we built so. Andrew knows this, and I don't think I've shared this with Keith, but like even when I played Starfield, right? Like even a brand new game, like I'm one of those guys that goes in and tries like min-max everything. So it's like I want this, I want that. I know exactly what kind of stats I'm going into, and I would fight to have that. And once I had that, right, no matter what I unlocked after that, like I didn't care because like my build was my build. And so I think to your point, Andrew, like yeah, the max guys, like they probably just have a dialed-in build, and you can still take them down because nobody had 1 million hit points, right? Like you'd have to have this card and that thing and everything locked in so you had your perfect build. But like I wasn't even focused on like the health part of it. What I was trying to do was just like fine tune the specific gun combo that I was going for. And when we were playing, and I shared a video with the boys earlier, but like when we were playing, like we were literally just going for maximum kills. Like we called it triple digit kills. Like if you got over 100,000 or 100 kills in one match, like we were happy. And that's all we were trying to do each match we played. So like we would go in straight heavy gunner, tuned into where it was like maximum firepower, maximum damage, maximum spread, put a shield up in front of your, turret on the heavy that we were trying to do. And that was the play that we did. And we just had so much fun doing that. Just like mowing down bots, 100 after 25 at a time or whatever you do when they're funneling through a corridor. Like it was just some of the best. I don't know. I just have good memories from that about just like thrashing dudes and having the build totally dialed in. Like it was just a fun time. And when you have 3 of your friends on there with you, like it is just the best. I think it's the best. It's like a Star Wars experience to this day from a multiplayer standpoint. Like that's one of my favorite Star Wars games to play. But
yeah, like this is also another thing I liked. So a lot of the game modes that you're playing some of them are PvP, but there's actually a good amount of game modes that are actually PvE. So it's you and 3 buddies or 4 buddies, I think, depending on some of the modes that you're playing. But you can actually just fight bots, and it actually still progresses exactly to your count. So yeah, if you're sick of playing these game modes where you're fighting people that are max level and you're like, oh, my cards aren't good enough, you can go and play the PvE modes. Still, I didn't notice any sort of like XP penalty. It seemed like it was still 1-for-1. So you could just smoke bots and just level up your classes that you really want to focus on, which is a really nice touch. And so, like I said, like I liked how the gameplay was working of, because every game has unlockables. You pick a gun you like, you're unlocking new sights for it, new reduced recoil, blah, 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 whatever you want to say. And like I said, all the people I'm fighting, I never felt like I was like, oh, this guy has the perfect build. I'm not going into a game mode and seeing everyone play the same class, the same gun, the same build. It was very much just, what do you want to play as a play style? And it felt pretty fair. Even as a low level person, I was still having a lot of fun. I didn't feel like I was just having a miserable time just getting smoked by sweaties.
And I agree with that 100%, because like we and what I also like, which I don't think you fully like explored on the what you just said there, but like the scenarios you played too, like it was, you go into Jabba's palace as the Emperor, and then you're like kind of progressing through, and you're you're either pushing forward or you're retreating, and you're just getting like overrun by stuff. Like the PvE elements of it is what we gravitated to. I'd say like 80% of the time, those are the modes we were playing. Like we didn't play a lot of the mass multiplayer where you're just like capturing points over a big board on Geonosis. It was like, we like the ones where you're in Jabba's palace, or you're doing the first order run on, Takodana or whatever it may be, like Hoth or whatever it was. Like we loved those when it was PvE, because you would just mow down guys, and all you were doing is just progressing through or retreating. Like some of it was cool because like the game modes, which are unusual to modern games like Modern Warfare and Call of Duty and Battlefield 2042 or whatever, where you're like literally just on the retreat the whole time, or you're on the progress the whole time. Like it was just a fun way to do it. And all the story beats, like the stuff you could unlock, the Easter eggs, the visuals again were so vivid, and they were so accurate to like the lore of the franchise, that like it was just fun to run around Jabba's palace and find these little rooms and find all these little shortcuts and secrets. And you could unlock a room that had like Maz Kanata talking to you, and then you could find where Rey's lightsaber was. Like it was just really cool stuff that like they hadn't done before, and it was all like part of this game, which was just so cool. Again, as like a fan of the lore, it was awesome just experience. So we loved those modes, and that's what we played 80% of the time, maybe more. Like we just really enjoyed that part of it.
Oh, for me, I loved the big fights. I thought the big fights were a ton of fun. I normally like the ones that were, what game mode is it? I don't think it's Supremacy. I think Supremacy was just a domination mode.
Yeah, and you would go up to the ship, or you'd come down and have to defend. Like it was cool too, because you transitioned battlefields, which was a different take on it. Which again, it was kind of unusual for FPS.
Those were my favorite game modes, because those actually felt like you're playing the actual Star Wars battles. Like I love the one in Hoth, where the Empire's trying to push these AT-ATs, and as the Rebellion, you're trying to destroy them, and you're trying to prevent them from going to the shield generator and blowing it up. Like those game modes to me were just a ton of fun, but it was also very frustrating, because if you're playing with kids that don't understand the objective, like play the objective, like that's how you win the game. It gets frustrating, but man, I love those, because it's a lot of fun to be on the field, and then it's like, oh, now you're going up to the ship. Everyone boards ships, and now you're up there. It's a fun like altering of the game, like the playing field, that just is a ton of fun to me. Because one of my
I thought that was special. Yeah, because that you just don't see it a whole lot nowadays.
No, you don't.
Like you really don't. Yeah. Like you don't just go to a totally different battlefield. Now all of a sudden you're in the starship or whatever. Like it was a very different spin on it, which I appreciated. I thought that was awesome.
Yeah, which the Battlefield series kind of did a little bit. Like Battlefield, what was it, like 3? Where it had like the Levolution, where you could destroy something in the map, and it kind of changes the map a little bit. The gameplay was still the same. But in Battlefield 21 and 42, which was like the one time they went in the future, there was one game mode called Titans that I absolutely loved, where you're trying to capture points, and you're trying to lower a shield off a mothership, and then eventually you got to board the enemy mothership to blow it up. Like I loved that kind of gameplay of just like how it's kind of changing up the scenario of like what's going on. And yeah, I feel like Battlefront did that pretty well, because especially it's playing with these iconic battles that you know and love that you've watched on Star Wars. So they did a great job.
Yeah, for what it was. Yeah, it was a multiplayer shooter, right? That had these awesome scenarios in this incredible environment that was like straight out of the movies, and it was just an immersive. It was a really cool thing for what it was when you backed out all that crap like the microtransactions and the
gross
the
EA
campaign they
stuff.
had that was a 3-hour run. Yeah, I mean it was all good. It was just it's all we had also at the moment. Like it's all we had to like sink our teeth into in terms of Star Wars. So like it was cool. Like I have solid, really fun early gaming memories that like without that, maybe I wouldn't be such a gamer that I am today. So I really do. I did enjoy it. And I still do to this day, as I was talking to you earlier.
So this game truly is such a love letter to Star Wars fans. But Keith being here, not much of a Star Wars fan, did the actual gameplay of the multiplayer even really intrigue you that much?
I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it again when I was playing with you, but I wasn't compelled to keep playing. I like there's games. I think I was pretty high on this horse last time you were on, Donnie, and so it's kind of funny that I'm going to go back to it, and I think you already know. But like Exoprimal, that's a game. If we were playing, I'd be like, I'm going to keep going. This is a fun game in itself for me personally. When you signed off last time, I went, all right, cool, I'm done. And it wasn't because I wasn't having a good time. I just, without having the fun of a friend to play with and kind of, I don't know, because even because of the fact that like it was just quick play type of game, like it was very low pressure. I didn't care if we won or lost particularly. It was just fun to mess around and have a good time. So from that aspect, I definitely enjoyed my time playing it. I just don't know that it's something that I'd be like, you gotta check it out. Maybe if you've got some friends, but I still think like we've kind of danced around a little bit with Battlefield, and I think Battlefield is a like non-canon based similar type of shooter. Like there's obviously tons of differences in them, but where you have your hero based classes in some sense that they're not really heroes, but it's different play styles of support and engineers and all of these different things that you have to, just gives you a different opportunity in these big open battles. So I think while I'm not a Battlefield fan, if I was going for a big battle type of gameplay, I am gonna go towards Battlefield quicker than I am gonna go to Battlefront.
I'm surprised you say that.
Star Wars fan. No, again, it's if I'm going for that style of gameplay. I rarely do. But if I was, that's what I'm gonna do. But if I was a Star Wars fan, I could see myself picking up Battlefront even without the big battle aspect of it, if that makes sense. But also driving me more towards it than, say, Battlefield as an additional point.
So I'm surprised you're saying this, Keith, because we've, specifically when I say we, I mean me and my brother, we love the Battlefield series. We play quite a bit. We've tried to get you into it multiple times. And I always remember the one thing you always complain about is like you just don't know what's going on. You're getting shot from someone, right. You don't know where. You find the gameplay confusing. It's just a cluster of things going on. And so that's why I figured you would maybe gravitate more to this of Battlefront, because it's way more telegraphed of what's going on, who are the enemies, what's your objective. It's more low-key of just like having fun and blasting people. But this is also my slight complaint with Battlefront and why I like Battlefield slightly more. Battlefield is definitely more focused on your squad and team play. You have someone who is a medic, who can revive teammates who are down. You have someone who can provide ammunition to your teammates and replenish the grenades. You have someone who can repair and do things like that. In Battlefront, yes, there's these other classes, but essentially they're irrelevant. It does not matter, like, oh, we need someone, a sniper on our team. We need someone who can drop ammo. Like, that doesn't matter. It's more of what do you want to play. So to me, I felt like Battlefront was more of you're a single person looking to play a big multiplayer game. Battlefront's more your jam because it's not focused on team play. It's focused on you just blasting random people on the map, and that's it.
But see, to counter both of those, like, and not counter, but maybe like find the middle ground there is like that's how we did play again. Majority of our matches. My brother played. I played with 3 or 4 guys pretty consistently, and my brother was always the officer, so he had the healing capability. I had another guy who was always the AR guy or just the regular assault class, and so he was just there to like get the close up stuff, and then I was just the heavy that would just freaking lay down fire and just we had a good synergy with it. So like we always had ammo, we always had health, we always had shields, we always had a bubble shield. That's my brother's like classic move. It's like bubble shield out. It's like all right, great. huddle there and just like it was just it meshed really well. But again, to both y'all's point, like that, it helps when like you play to that strength, right? Like if you had a core group of guys, which again, we played mostly multiplayer, mostly PvE. So like we just had that system down where like we knew when we were going to get into a tight spot, boom, pop the bubble shield. We're just mowing guys down. Like that was great. Like that was part of what made this experience so great. But again, we didn't play as a solo. We didn't play in the big battles because we, same thing with Battlefield where like you walk out there, just get sniped by some guy 300 yards away. Like we just didn't play those modes, but we had so much fun playing those scenarios and those PvE controlled, game modes that there were. So that's the part I love, and that's the part that I really just enjoyed about this game.
But Donnie, to kind of go back a little bit of like what you were talking about, I gotta say one thing. I think EA, it's a company that has many of its faults, which we've talked about a little bit before. I mean, I think it's funny that EA, I think it won or lost. It won the worst company in the world like 3 or 4 years in a row.
Most hated. I think it was most hated.
I think it's most hated. Yeah, I think that was
world.
the actual technical term. Which is funny. It's ironic because now it's, I think, Activision Blizzard. Yeah, actually, I haven't heard many people complain about EA. I feel like EA has finally kind of corrected its stuff.
Well, what have they done recently to this scale?
Well, it still does. They still do gross microtransaction stuff with all their EA Sports stuff, but nobody's complaining about it because the people who love those games of Madden and FIFA are perfectly okay opening their wallets to make these Ultimate Teams. So I guess like they can't complain about it because it's just they're EA's just feeding their addiction.
So crazy. Because if you want to talk about pay to win, by
those
golly,
Ultimate Team stuff,
your wallet on those Ultimate Teams,
it's so gross.
I mean, not to go on a big tangent about Madden and sports games, but like you can build some pretty bonkers teams in those Madden things, anyways. And you're like, I'm a 93 overall, but the difference between a 93 and a 97 team and what it takes to get there with the money, holy macaroni. Yeah. It is ridiculous, and anyways, yeah, that's just a whole different thing.
It does blow my mind that people like just open their wallets and will drop thousands of dollars to be able to play like online. It's weird about it. But anyway, despite EA being really gross and doing all these things, I guess the one thing that they truly, truly succeeded in with Battlefront is, I think, the graphics. As you kind of pointed out with Donnie, that there's these tons of little graphical Easter eggs. I think they nailed the environments. Playing these huge battles that you've known and loved in the movies. I feel like they are a really well designed, like not only to the movie, but also just on a gameplay aspect. Like none of them felt like, it's got to be movie accurate, and this map isn't fun because it's movie accurate, and so it's very one sided. No, everything felt like I was playing on Hoth, like I was playing on, crap. I'm drawing blank names of planets.
Geonosis, any other game, any other map. No,
yeah, that's a good map.
You're 100% right, though, Andrew. Yeah, no. If you think about it, though, like, because again, like, right, any good licensed franchise should literally meet the letter of like what they're trying to achieve, right? Like, if this was a Jaws themed game, you would hope that Amity would be in there somewhere,
because
right?
you want
like,
to bring the fans. You want to bring the Star Wars fans.
Yeah. That's what it's for. You license the game. They paid how much? Hundreds of thousands of dollars to license the game. Get it. Totally get it. But they did do it justice in that aspect. And I think that, to your point, Andrew, that's where EA does have some power and deserves some appreciation, because they honestly did. Graphics, and it's not just graphics. It's the sound. It's the audio. It's the when a guy gets smoked. It's the Wilhelm scream that you hear, way down the way. It's the sound of the guns, the fire, like that. Just the sound effects were great. The audio was great. The visuals were amazing. These maps were tight too. A lot of them, even the big maps, are tighter than you think they are. But when you look off into the vista, all you see is mountains, and you see gunships, and you see battle happening. Like it was really immersive in the graphics and audio scale. Like I really enjoyed that piece of it as well. So they knocked it out of the park there, as they should for a licensed franchise, especially of this size.
Yeah.
But
yeah, like that's, and I guess that's one thing I can't like fault. I know we were complaining about it a little bit before with like that the skins were kind of meh, but I guess it makes sense. Like obviously you're not going to be like, hey, it's a stormtrooper, now he's John Wick. Like, it's a stormtrooper that looks like someone from Minecraft. Like, you can't really do that because it is an odd balance of, like, you want to make skins that are cool, but you also don't want to upset your fan base that, that your stormtroopers look really weird. But I felt like they could have had more fun with some of the obscure stuff of the Star Wars history. But at least like, yeah, just the design of all the weapons and everything like that is really fantastic. But that being also said, it also kind of stinks when you unlock weapons for each of these classes. All the guns look the same. Like, to me, I'm like, it's a blaster. And then you show me another gun. I'm like, it's also a blaster. I don't know. But it's like, no, this is the E3D25. Like, don't you know that? It's like, I don't know. Like, it all looks like blasters to me. Yeah, graphically. And like I said, the cutscenes and the cinematics are really, really good. Like, they did a really good job with the motion capture. It just looks and feels and sounds so good. And it just, like, Star Wars, this came out in the 70s. And so, like, you can really see kind of the 70s-ness in a lot of the stuff. Like, when you're playing some of these, you're seeing the computers. You're like, man, this computers look like crap. Like, but like that's Star Wars. It came out in the 70s. The officers have a headset.
The goofiest looking character in the game are the officers.
Yeah, their headset looks so crappy. It's like, man, like, what is the audio you probably hear in those? Like, those are like straight 70s headphones. But that is actually lore accurate, which I absolutely loved.
And the lore accuracy is one thing too, because again on that differentiation between like the skins and the guns and whatever, like they also had to fit within a box, right? Like, because the only real differentiation they had was on the rebels, right? Because the rebels would take anybody, but all of your Empire guys were either a white stormtrooper, as in white suit, or like a British speaking guy or girl, and that's like all it was. So like they didn't have a ton of, the pool wasn't very deep for them to go into. But when you're on the Rebels side, like they had crazy aliens with like weird straggly beards and like all sorts of craziness. Like that part was cool. Could they have had more? Absolutely. If they would have continued supporting this game for 8 to 10 years, like a lot of developers do, then maybe we could have gotten some of that. But we simply didn't. Yeah, because the game had such a fight from birth to the 4 or 5 years, after when they're just like, this is what it is now. Like, you can pop that disc in your PlayStation or Xbox right now. It hasn't had an update in about 5 years. So
which
like,
is
whatever.
Which is so sad. Like, do you think? So EA's normally had a contract with Disney, and they're like one of the few. I think it's them and Ubisoft that literally has like the rights to make Star Wars games. Do you think there'll ever be a Battlefront 3?
Well, I don't think it'll be in the same vein because their contract has expired. If I remember correctly, it expired this year. It expired 2023, so there should be, like, the next one would be 2024, 2025, if it's continued the series. I think they're going to take a hard left or right and just change up the format and just kill the Battlefront name, or bring it back as a nostalgia trip in 2 or 3 years with a different developer and different not platform, but different concept, if you will.
I thought they still can make Star Wars game. They're just not exclusive anymore. Because I know before it was exclusive, but now Ubisoft's coming out with Outlaws, right? It's Ubisoft that has Outlaws.
Yeah.
But I would not be.
And I think
I would not be surprised if they did with Battlefront 3.
I think
I wouldn't be surprised.
Easily be a reboot.
It already been rebooted though. The series is a reboot.
It's a third reboot.
I mean, how many movie franchises have been rebooted multiple times? How many game franchises? Maybe not game franchises.
How many times has Star Wars been rebooted? At least 3 times at this point. Like, who gives a crap at this point?
I think it's perfectly fine. At this point, it's just they've made it better each time. So third time's the charm, right? Like, give them a chance, and maybe that's the trick. Or just call it Star Wars Battlefront 3 and still be a reboot and everybody wins.
See, I don't think they would call it Star Wars Battlefront. Like, they would have to change the name. Because the fact that there's already 2 games with Star Wars Battlefront and 2 games with Star Wars Battlefront 2, they gotta change the name. I think they would come up with a third. And, like, I think it would actually... Because, like, it stinks. Because these are really good games. They are fun. They're fun, love letters to fans. The gameplay is fun. That's the other thing I kind of want to ask. Is there anything you guys would want to change if they did a third?
Well, the microtransactions was a good thing to change.
They did already change that. Thank God.
I mean, I think, and again, keep in mind this came out. So the first one came out in 2015. Second one came out in 2017, right? Like, there's been a lot of progress in terms of modern day video games. 2020 on. Right, there's the unit. You've got Unreal. You've got all these engines that have been changing and evolving and getting better. I think there is a lot of room they could improve on graphics, on immersion, on the linear versus open world kind of approach they take. I think there's a ton of things they could do. I still think they're going to have to work in a box, right? And they'll just have to say, Star Wars fans get it, or people that just want a Star Wars game understand that we have to work within this lore. I think that's going to be a challenge. And I think this Outlaw, is it Outlaw or Outcast? I don't even know at this point.
I'm pretty sure.
The launch trailer was like half a year ago. But yeah, I mean, either way, like they're going to have to work within the box. And I totally understand that. I think there is room to grow. I think they're in this process like they were with the movies where they didn't have the full plan baked out, and they've just got to really think about what they're going to deliver. And the fans aren't as hungry for it as they were in the late, 2010s or 2017, 15 area. So, like, I don't think they're as hungry for it, so they've got to really be careful. Much like with the sequel trilogy, how they, like, first one was okay, second one kind of weird, third one totally, is very controversial. Yeah. It's like, all right, guys, well, like you're testing and learning here, but then you got the Mandoverse and all this new stuff, and they've pivoted a bit. So, like, I think you're going to see some of that in the Star Wars games. But I mean, I welcome anything. I just want more content, really. That's it. I just want more of it to play.
Yeah, it is kind of odd since like there is no new trilogies going on. This game essentially has all of the major battles. So it's like if you came out with a Battlefront 3, it's like, what else are you going to make up battles to play?
Right.
And for me, I would really like more team play. But I do love how this is. It is kind of an odd thing. Like I would like a Battlefront 3. But like now that I'm thinking about it, I'm like, I don't know how much more they would change. Cause
what could they do?
Yeah, because there's not
they
new
did
battles.
Squadrons. Squadrons was a different take on it. It was strictly cool. It was strictly stuck to space combat, but even that was so limited and it was so small feeling. It wasn't like you had all this stuff you could do and go to these planets and have like a full, I don't want to say Starfield, but like a full Starfield experience. It just wasn't like that. You didn't have that. And if they can incorporate that kind of element where it's like take the good bits of the Jedi Survivor series and the Fallen Order stuff, mix that with Squadrons and make this open world kind of unique scenario that has its own story, that could be something. And maybe that's what this Outlaw game is. But right now we just don't know, man.
Man, now I'm thinking about it. Yeah, I don't think Battlefront 3 is ever going to happen.
It may not.
Yeah, because
I mean, they could reboot it.
But it would just kind of be recycling. I mean, the only thing I can think of is like you have more player count. But, like, playing some games with more player count, it just ends up being more hectic. And, like, I feel like I generally don't have as much fun when it's just more player count because it just ends up being more hectic. I don't know. Man, I just kind of made myself sad.
Agreed.
I mean, there's so much Star Wars lore. Why couldn't they just do more battles from the trilogies? Like, there's battles in the Clone Wars and stuff, right?
But they're in this.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
Keith, what you're also forgetting, there's been 40 years and 9 movies around one stinking family. It's a giant galaxy.
That's what I hate.
There's plenty to do.
Thank you.
There's plenty to do.
That's my biggest complaint
bonkers.
about a lot of stuff, but Star Wars is the biggest one. Yeah. Like I thought Disney learned when they first came with The Mandalorian. The Mandalorian was clearly not a nostalgia trip. It was like, hey, this is a separate story. Star Wars. This is a separate story just going on the side. And everyone loved it. But now, like, as Mandalorian's going on, it's like, hey, here's Luke Skywalker. And it's just like, come on. Yeah. Like, we know these characters.
Come on.
And, like, that's...
It all has to circle back.
And I'm sorry. I know my brother always gets mad at me, but it's the same with, like, the Halo. Like, when...
Oh, I was waiting for this.
When you're trying to create a show of something, I want a side story. It's a whole universe. Just give me a side story. And they're great. You can have more creative freedom, and it's great. And so, like, that's what I thought Disney was learning. But then it's like, here's the Obi-Wan series, and then here's Ahsoka, which Ahsoka is kind of a side thing. Unless you're a super fan who's been watching everything, you know her. But I don't know. But I agree.
Well, you want to talk about the Boba Fett show? Because that's a disaster.
Oh my god,
well.
I hated the Boba Fett show so much. When I was watching that, I was halfway through that season. I was like, this sucks so bad. I wanted to like this. I was like, but this is so bad. God, those scooters.
No, but really though, like in that perspective, like you compare Game of Thrones, and it still is a very concise universe, but in a kingdom, you have multiple families and all these different storylines and so many different offshoots that you can have. But Star Wars, you have a universe, a galaxy, and it's, hey, here's this one family. Again, it's obviously they've done well with it. People do, and I'm not saying that's the reason I have it against it, but it is such a funny idea, and it in space shows, games in general, it's weird. And I don't know if it's because it's so hard to tackle. Like, I don't know, because like how far can you go? Almost like a Rick and Morty in a sense. It almost has to be comedic to go to the extent of how crazy can it be if you really go to the edges of the galaxy. So maybe that's why they concise it up, but it's kind of funny to think about.
Well, that's what I think it was like why people have been loving like The Mandalorian. For season 1 was so good because it was like its own separate thing. And I think that's why people are liking these single player games of like Star Wars Jedi Survivor and Jedi. The first one was Fallen Order. There we go. It was a separate story, and it's just like it's this fun universe of like having fun, but you're still kind of tied to the thing. Like you don't need to be like, as you said, like comedic, but I love these kind of offshoot things that are going on.
I was going to say, I think that's part of it too, is that there's like, unfortunately, they're still in this test and learn phase where they're like, since 2015, we've been trying stuff, and the Star Wars fan base is one of the worst fan bases that are out there. And you can hate me or like me for whatever you are on either side of the coin. I don't care. That's what it is. Like, you're either like, oh my God, I just want more Star Wars, but not like that. Like, come on, dude. Like, I just want more content. I want more to watch. I want more to play. And that's what I enjoy. And like, yeah, there's some good, there's some bad, but that's part of it. And I think that like they still haven't figured it out yet. And trust me, it'll take far longer. They got to figure out the movies and how they're going to get subscribers and how they're going to get people watching this crap. And then they'll be like, oh, they like this. Let's make a Mando game. That'll be perfect. Everybody will love that. Like, that's what it's going to take, is like, it's just going to take enough hammers to the head until they're like, well, people actually like this and they respond to it. So let's build something for that. It's an unfortunate fandom to be a part of in a community because it's very toxic. Yeah. But people that love it, and people that want to hate it and still love it, do that too. I don't understand how it works, but that's just the fandom that this is.
See, I love having you here, Donnie. It's like it's great for me to hear, like, as a Star Wars fan, because I always loved Star Wars, and at one point I was like, oh, I'm considering myself almost a super fan. But then, like, when Disney was kind of doing the stuff with it, I'm like, this content sucks. Like they were at a point where I'm just like, I don't like Star Wars anymore because the stuff they're putting out is awful. And it's refreshing hearing from you. You still considering yourself a fan and a super fan, but you still admit that, you know, it has a Star Wars name on it, but it's not good. Because that's one thing that always blows my mind. Usually with like Disney fans, I have a couple coworkers that like anything Disney puts out, they are day one there consuming it, and I'm just like, just because it has its name. Like, it doesn't mean you have to be like, I love it. It's great. Please keep feeding me this garbage. Like, I love, it's refreshing hearing from you, Donnie, that you admit that the stuff's not great.
I appreciate that, but like, keep in mind too, it happens with almost every fandom, right? I mean, Star Trek is the same, is similar. I'm assuming. Doctor Who was a great example, right? Doctor Who, they have a new doctor, right? And be like, oh my God, I hate this guy. I love the old ones. I hated those old ones. I love the new ones. Like, who gives a shit I'm sorry. Who gives a crap? If you're getting like new stuff coming out, just enjoy it. And if you don't, that's fine. Go on to the next one. Of course, just watch the one again that you like. It doesn't matter. Just keep getting content. That's the best part of it.
But anyway, achievements. I guess we should continue going with the Star Wars Battlefront here. Achievements. As far as achievements go, I don't recommend it for achievement hunters. It's fine. A lot of the achievements, of course, are multiplayer based. So you just got to put a lot of time in multiplayer. It's a lot of, getting a first kill within a match. Some of them are kind of easily obtainable, but it just takes work. And this game's not dead, but there is definitely a less player base. So unfortunately, a lot of these achievements are meant for multiplayer, and you can have a hard time. What was the game mode we played, Keith? Blast. That's what it was. That's meant to be like a small focus game mode. It literally was me and Keith versus one kid. And we killed him enough till he rage quit, and we finally got a win. So we got that achievement to win a game mode in Blast. But yeah, so you might have a bit of a struggle trying to get some of the achievements for specific game modes that are kind of dead. So the player base is low in here, but it's not a completely dead game. So yeah, don't recommend it for achievement hunters.
And again, yeah, and I actually played it. I think I played it on PlayStation 4. Like I played it before I was even like an Xbox Game Pass subscriber. So like my achievements weren't even there like to do it. But those PvE modes are still fun to play, and regardless of who's on or not on in the multiplayer space, you can still hit those up, and they're just as much fun as they were in 2018 as they are in 2023. So like, I thought those are still fun. Again, to your point, probably not the achievement hunters game, but like still fun to play. And it doesn't matter if there's another guy with you or there's lobby full of people. It's still fun to play those modes. At least me and my guys play it still regularly. I would say often enough.
Yeah. But as far as Metacritic goes, that's not the reviews. I need to wrap this up because I keep drinking this wine, and honestly, it's like heavy alcohol content, and I'm slowly slipping here.
Make sure
I'm slipping here.
Make sure you're not reviewing Battlefront 1 like Keith did.
Well, I actually was going to mention Metacritic scores here, but that's being our reviews. So let's wrap it up here. Donnie, why don't you go first?
All right. So my final review. Listen, it's a good game for what you want to get out of it, right? If you're a fan, if you're not a fan, even if you're a casual fan and somebody just says, hey, man, I love Star Wars, or I just want to play this Star Wars game with you, I highly suggest you try it out. If you're not if you're not comfortable with the Battlefield style, walking out into the 32v32 where everybody's against you, and you do that thing that I used to do where you walk out, get sniped, and then all of a sudden you're just frustrated because you can't get past the first 20 feet of the match. I get that, totally understand it. Battlefront 2 does have a couple options for you to play with. Again, I think it's super fun if you play with some buddies, especially anybody that's familiar with the lore, or if you just want to get immersed in the world, in the lore that is Star Wars. I think it still holds up to this day. Even for a 2017 game, the graphics are on point. The ambiance, the music, the sound, the weapons and the guns, even though they're relatively limited in terms of like not having more than, say, 25 options per class or whatever it may be. Yeah, it's a little bit limited, but again, you're working in the Star Wars box and it's all lore accurate. So if you take it from that perspective, honestly, Andrew, Keith, I would rate this like a 93.
Wow.
in my personal.
Well,
Because of the hours I've put hours into this. I mean, I've probably put more hours. I probably put a couple hundred hours into this. I would say at least 250, something like that. That sounds about right. I think I'm a level. I want to say I'm over a level 100 now, but I would say that I put enough time in where I've fully done just about everything you can in the game. I still have a fun time playing it now. 5-6 years later, I enjoy it. It holds a special place in my heart. It killed loot boxes, which I do appreciate. I mean, it helped kill loot boxes. I hate those. so in my heart, yeah, it's in the high 90s. I'll give it a solid 93, just because I have so much fun playing it with the core group of guys that I still to this day play this game with.
Well, I'm going to go next because I want to disagree with you, Donnie. Yes, it killed loot boxes, and I'm mad at this game for killing loot boxes because now all we have is battle passes, and I want my loot boxes back. But seriously though, well, I do actually miss loot boxes, but I really don't blame this game for it. It's just the awful greediness of bigwigs that kind of ruin things in games. But as for me though, like I said, the campaign, even if you're not interested in the multiplayer and stuff that's going on in Battlefront 2, if you're having a hard time getting into matches, I actually think the campaign is actually still worth your time. The story, the audio, the graphics are really good. I actually enjoyed the story, even though it's nothing like, game changing. It was still a very fun time to watch. It was cool to see, the rehashing of the characters of Luke Skywalker and Leia and Han Solo, even though they don't have the voice actors. I think we forgot to mention that the voice acting actually of those main characters isn't great, but the actual overall voice acting and acting in this game is good. The actual gameplay for the campaign is a little hit or miss. But if you do play the multiplayer, I, once again, do disagree with you, Donnie. I don't think you need a squad because I felt like there wasn't as much team play as you will get in Battlefield of someone who replenishes ammo and health and stuff like that. There are some options, but if you're someone like me who's played a lot of Battlefield, you want more. And so to me, it felt a little shallow when it came to the actual team play. but the battles are awesome. If you are a Star Wars fan, this is 100% a game you should check out. They definitely put their homework in. It's really good. The sound effects of, all the blasters and seeing the sceneries, the creatures, the vehicles, they did a fantastic job. And as Keith said, I love, as far as the multiplayer came, you just, right at the beginning of the menu, there's a quick play. It's basically saying any mode that you're willing to play. If there's people in it, we'll throw you in it. So I just did quick play. Boom, I'm playing a co-op mission. Next mission, I'm playing a 32 versus 32 supremacy mode. Next mission, I'm playing Ewok Hunt. It was just a fun grab bag of I just want to play this game. Put me in a game, and the game did it for you. So it was very simple and easy and quick, and I love that. It was, the progression of unlocking everything for characters is fun, but it didn't hook me. Overall, I give this game an 80. I think it's not dead. But, it's definitely obviously a lower player count, but it's still a lot of fun to be had here, especially if you're a Star Wars fan.
Yeah, Star Wars Battlefront. I mean, I won't go deep on that. That's just don't bother.
Please give us a review of Star Wars Battlefront first, Keith. What did you give that?
The training missions were pretty good.
Missions.
I got to fly some
tutorials.
One thing I can tell you too, that as a fun side note, at least I knew that nobody was playing that game when I got an achievement for one of the training missions, and it was one of the diamond ones of like 2%. I was like, nobody plays this game, huh? But anyways, I carried on, and it's pretty much dead to play online, so don't really bother.
There was a VR mode though in Battlefront 1, which is the whole reason I bought it. It was like $5 a couple years ago, and I bought it just because I had PSVR 1. And there is a VR mode, which is unique. What you get to do is literally just look around an X-Wing in VR, which was cool at the time in 2015. We're at a totally different age of VR now, but maybe that's a selling point for anyone that's still got a PSVR 1 on this podcast that's listening to a Game Pass crap bag.
So if you're listening to this in 2015, definitely check out that version of Battlefront. It's so worth it. But if you're listening to this anytime now in 2023 and you're playing on Game Pass, skip Battlefront, go to Battlefront 2. If you're not a big fan of Star Wars as a whole, I think probably personally skip it, just because I don't think that the gameplay as a whole brings enough to the added value to really invest yourself. Again, unless you have some friends who want to play it. Because I even last night, when I realized my goof up, I didn't have time to install it, so I was just cloud playing it, and I had no struggles in any capacity doing cloud play with it. So if you have some friends who want you to join, then by all means do it then, because it is a lot of fun to play with some friends. But outside of that, I just can't really give a lot of reason to say that it's worth the gameplay unless you really like the Star Wars aspect of it. Everything is fine. It plays well, but I go back to the idea that if my original statement that if you want to play a big battle, if you want to have that immersive experience, I think Battlefield is better. I think, and it's also on Game Pass. The weapons have more of a dynamic feel to them. Even though I don't know all of them because I don't play it, I just know the vast number of guns that are in there. And you don't have to know the Star Wars lore to know the background of it. You kind of just know them from whatever first-person shooter you've played in your lifetime. So from that aspect, it's still definitely perfectly fine. But for me, it's kind of the opposite of Donnie. Like I just, because of my lack of Star Wars, it's kind of a. I've been really good at podcast noises lately, so. For me, it salvages out at a 75 because I think the gameplay and even though I'm not a Star Wars fan, the experiences are immersive. I think I kind of zoned out a little bit during the audio and video portion of this podcast.
That's not like you.
I don't. No, I know it's very unlike me. Usually, I at least chime in. But like the music, it has all of the iconic feels. So even if you kind of just have the knowledge of Star Wars like myself, it's still has all of the workings that you would expect, and it kind of is cool in the aspect if you respect the franchise. So it at least salvages out to a 75 for the quality that it brings. I think Lucasfilms does a pretty good job of making sure that people don't flub up their work. It's one of the few good things I like about an arrogant director. Whereas James Cameron will let anybody do anything with Avatar because he wants somebody to watch it. I'm with Aaron on this one. Donnie, have you seen Avatar?
Oh, I've seen all the Avatars, but that game's coming out real soon.
Okay,
so wait, you saw Avatar too?
Well, we'll have to report back to Aaron. We have finally found
you
someone.
You were literally the first person I've ever heard who actually said they watched Avatar 2.
That movie's made $1 billion, and we've yet to find a person who's seen it.
We doubt it.
I've seen it. I've got my opinions. We can do that on a separate podcast.
We'll invite you back we'll invite you and Aaron Drew's brother, Aaron, on for a crosstalk, point talk about Avatar 2. I think that could be interesting.
I like people are only going to know what you're talking about here, Keith, if they listen to my brother's podcast.
Or no, he's brought it up on every episode. I think he's been on ours.
On every episode.
I bring up the Halo TV show. He brings up Avatar 2.
In all fairness, I think sometimes I bring it up just to trigger him because I think it's funny. But so yeah, like I said, it's kind of I don't know. I respect it as the franchise, and so it'll remain a 75. I was trying to see if I could find a Metacritic review to fill in for those.
I have a Metacritic review.
Do you have our favorite one?
No, I didn't. Well, I didn't look that much into it. I was trying to look actually now while you were talking because you were talking a very long time.
See, you're welcome. I gave you time to do that.
But as Star Wars, a Metacritic, Star Wars Battlefront 2 has an 83. Oh wait, that's Star Wars Battlefront 2 in 2005. This Star Wars Battlefront 2 has a 68. And the reason it has a 68 for a Metascore from critics, for user score, can you guys guess? Let's do a guess here. What do you think?
Lower.
What do you think the user score is for Battlefront 2?
I'd say lower.
1 through 10, Donnie. What is it?
Battlefront 2.
Who's closest?
1 through 10. What is it? 1 through 10?
Yeah, it's 1 through 10.
So a 6 at that point.
You think it's a 6? All right. What about you, Keith?
Yeah, I guess if we're gonna give it the fact that it probably has had a chance to come back a little bit, I will call it a 4.
Well, Keith's the closest. Do you guys not know Metacritic? It only gets reviews when the game first comes out. So, with that being said, it has a Metascore from users as a 1.7. And obviously, the reviews are because of the awful loot box system and how much this game is a pay to win. So, yeah. That being said, it's definitely way better now. But obviously, people don't go to Metacritic and do a review for games that have been out since 2017. Always, those reviews are within like the first 3 months. So, as Donnie pointed out, the loot boxes are bad.
If Star Wars is anything, it is nothing but a redemption story.
Yeah,
okay?
it is.
So that's all I'm trying to say about this.
Oh, 100%.
That's how I can justify my 95.
Yeah, it has over 7,000 negative reviews and slightly over 1,000 positive reviews. That's why it's a 1.7.
Also, the World Guinness records for most downvotes on Reddit post ever in history.
Gosh, I was reading that while we were talking about it, and
what was the post?
I feel for
like the developers trying to justify the loot boxes.
It was from the EA community team. Do you want me to read it real quick? I have it here. The intent is to provide players with a sense of pride and accomplishment for unlocking different heroes.
I remember this.
As for cost, we selected initial values based upon data from the open beta and other adjustments made to milestone rewards before launch. Among other things, we're looking at average per-player credit earn rates on a daily basis, and we'll be making constant adjustments to ensure that players have challenges that are compelling, rewarding, and of course attainable via gameplay. We appreciate the candid feedback and the passion the community has put forth around the current topics here on our Reddit, our forums, and across numerous social media outlets. Our team will continue to make changes and monitor community feedback and update everyone as soon as and often as we can.
Good job. Thank you so much, Keith, for reading that. I forgot. I remember as soon as you started reading this, I'm like, I forgot how bad this was.
Well, I think that actually was a reply to the Reddit post, which was like from a EA representative, and I was like, "Wow, that's the most canned thing I've ever heard in my entire life."
Yeah, the title of the post was seriously, I paid $80 to have Vader locked. And that was their response. That was absolutely a copy and paste macro to every complaint they saw about the microtransactions for sure.
Oh man, that's just a nostalgia trip. Just you reading that, I forgot about that because I remember when that came out. That was shared everywhere, and I remember like, just even hearing that now, I'm like, man, that is a dumb response. This was not proofread because just about anyone who's not a executive at EA can tell that this was a bad response.
Yep.
Man, so Star Wars Battlefront. This is a kind of a nostalgia trip.
95.
Yeah. 95. All right. Anyway, I've been your Hardcore Gamers host, Andrew. Thank you for so much for joining us. You can find me next week's Live Fiber 01952. If you have any game suggestions or anything, go to GameBassGrabBag.com. Highly recommend you go to our Discord. Me and Keith are quite active on it. If you want to talk to us, hang out with us, we talk games, share photos. It's a great time. Come join our Discord. You can also see us record live. But yeah, that'll be at GameBassGrabBag.com. Donnie, why don't you go next? Because Keith doesn't say anything important.
I'll continue the jazz hands. I'm Donnie. Target Trash on Game Pass. Anywhere else on Xbox, you want to find me there. Also had a podcast. We're doing a couple other things. I'll keep the boys up to date on what we got going on in terms of what's coming along for podcast stuff, because we do have some plans for 2024. So I will definitely let you guys know about that. But yeah, you can find me anywhere on Game Pass or PlayStation, really. If anybody plays any games, anything Steam included, Tarkin Trash is my name. Appreciate you guys having me out there. Craftologyradio.com is where you can find all of our stuff. But it's just been a pleasure talking to you guys. And again, thank you. I knew this was going to be a long episode. Sorry that we went over a bit and probably went in a couple tangents, but I do appreciate you guys having me on here. And it's been a pleasure just chatting with you boys.
I love you called out my jazz hands. That is always something I always do subconsciously. Granted, I've also been drinking this episode, and I'm now feeling a bit tipsy. But yeah, it's like a natural reaction to me whenever I do the final outro. I do jazz hands. Thank you, Dottie. Go ahead, Keith. Make sure you review our listener.
Oh, crap. Who was it again?
Subnautica Gamer.
Subnautica Gamer. So I've been Keith, as always. And as always with any listener pick, this one goes out to Subnautica. What was it?
Subnautica Gamer.
Subnautica Gamer. What
do you think he likes?
I don't even like Subnautica, but could you have suggested that instead? Thanks for listening. 9+, as always. But next time, maybe not a Star Wars game, because I don't do Star Wars. I'd rather do other Spaceman Go Shoot.
Like Halo. We have had more people recommend that we play Halo again, so that may be your wish, Keith.
Good. Well, you know me. I love Spaceman Go Shoot games. They always do me very well. So yeah, solid 93.
All right.
Do I do a 9? Do I do it at 100 or at 10?
You do like out of a.
It translates the same. You can do the math.
You do it out of 10 because when I first recommended a game, you gave me an 8.3, and the other gentleman that also recommended a game, you gave him an 8.7. So I'm just letting you know that. Well, it's out of 10.
Well, at some point along the line, I transitioned into a system where everyone's a 9+. So I apologize, Donnie, that you got in before the 9+ system. You're now above a 9, though. You're at Battlefront 2 9.3.
I love Donnie called you out on that. That was great.
People don't forget.
I just imagine every night he's just like stewing in bed, like, oh, Keith got me below a 9. Anyway, we love you all. We'll see you again next week.
Bye.